Hi and welcome to our first video on this particular hat here. So what we're going to be doing this time is blocking this piece, and then I'm going to be showing you how to put in another section, which this section is actually domed. So this is flat, this is domed, and I put a lattice piece on this as well, and it's curling up a little bit further than it would normally if it was just a sort of half a circle shape. So it's actually coming up, and then I've used the fabric colours to elongate it all the way around. This here can be down, or like the other pink hat I showed you, it can be curling up. You can have this bigger, wider, you can have this bigger, you can sort of put the design into your own, you give it your own style and your own ideas. And then we've got a button piece underneath there, and then I've got a headband and elastic on that one. So you can use this idea and make a few different other ones. I'd love to see what you come up with, can't wait for that. So this one actually sits on the head like this, so this can be much bigger, much taller. I've made them in different styles. I've had black happening here, sort of black thread and black ribbon coming around to accentuate that, to use different trimmings on. So however you fancy, you can use this style and then change it up. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is block this section here on this block. The block that I'm using is my big brim block. So this one is really good. This one is from Guy Morse Brown, and it's more of a Mother of the Bride style this side with the domed brim, and this is a B16 22.5-inch block. A few of you have got this, but if you don't have this, then you could use a flat surface for it, or any other sort of brim block that you have. What we're going to use is this side, because this is slightly domed. So then we could use a little section of this on the hat if you like to. But that is quite flat, but it's got a little bit of a dome. So I've taken sort of this part here, not that much of that, because that came over the eye, it would be too much. So I'm using this sort of section here and all of this. So you could get away with a flat surface like I showed you in the Ascot bundle if you don't have this block. Now, the other block that we're going to need is a crown block, which most of you do have. A normal crown block like this one. Cover it all in plastic, cling film or plastic bags to protect it all. And also, if, as you know, if your Cinema gets attached to the wood, it's really hard to get it off. So it's easier to get it off plastic. So you want to cover it all, and it's to protect the wood as well, so the wood doesn't get too damp. And then we put our Cinema on top. I have 3 different colours here. So this fuchsia is really in at the moment. I've got a purple going on in the middle, because I'm going to put purple on the trim in the middle. And this one here, this sort of greeny blue colour, which I really like, and that's really trendy as well. So I thought we'll put those together. So one side will be the pink, and then the back of the hat is going to be this more greeny blue. Now I've cut them so I've got triangles. So this is my bias running through here. So I've got the straight grain here, straight grain going down there, and my bias going straight across. So I'm going to use all of this and block this first. So I've got 3 layers. I've got my water bottle. I've got my blocking pins. I've got straw stiffener for later. A little pot to put it in. One of my arty brushes. An iron, so I use my little travel iron when I'm here in the studio, and I've got my wet cloth. So we'll start blocking this one. Just in case you've never watched any of the other videos, I've got a small little travel iron, and I haven't put any water in that, because if I did and I start moving it around, the water would pour out. So I've kept this one without any water in it, and I just use it for my hat. So you can hear that sizzling, and that means that this is wet enough and this is hot enough. And it's the cloth here, the cotton cloth, that I've covered in water, and I've wrung it out so it's not dripping everywhere. It's just nice and sort of heavy with water, and then I'm just going to run this iron over it all, and then I can pull my bias section. So I've got a bias running across here. I'm going to pull either side like we do with all the other blocks, and then I'm going to do my front and my back, and then I'm going to work on my corners. So as you can see, what I've been doing is pulling where the bias is and then spreading the straight grain one side out and then the other side out. So I've got the front and the back here and then the two sides here, and then when I get to straight grain I've actually pushed all of the straight grain into that bias point and all of that straight grain into that bias point, so I'm spreading it out to get rid of it. So here we've got a bias, so I know I can get stretch on that, but here I've got straight and here it's sort of in between, so if I can't really pull that much there either, so I'm going to have to pull that into there, into the bias. I've got this little bump here, so I can pull some of that out because that's the bias there where the two grains are meeting. And then I have the last bit here, so this is a straight grain. I'm going to be pushing a lot of that straight into this bias here and a lot of that straight into the other bias over there, so I'm going to be stretching it that way into this bias. So this is dry, that's why it won't work, the grains won't knit together because it's still dry. So as soon as I wet it I can pull here on the bias because the grains are meeting, and then I can stretch that into that point there and get rid of that. And then what we're going to do is just go over the whole thing and make sure it's all flat, and then I will dry it. So I will get a a dry cloth and go over that with the iron and make sure that's really, really dry before I then add on my straw stiffener, because this is a smelly old clear straw stiffener, and if that touches water then that will go white. So I have to make sure this is really, really dry before I put that on. If you have the PVA mix, then you can just put it on straight after, so that's fine. So what I'm going to need is my stiffener, a pot, a brush, make sure it's really, really dry, and then start working that into this and then leave that to dry before we do the next bit. So that's nearly done. I've just got a few bumps and excess bits on the top I want to get rid of, and make sure all the sides are really smooth before I leave it to dry. So that means just going over it again with your wet cloth, make sure it's wet enough. There, so it's nearly all finished. Just a tiny little bit of work needed to do on it, and then it's all smooth. And I'm going to wait for that to dry, like I just said. I'm going to put a dry cloth on there and iron over it as well, just to make sure. And then I've got my straw stiffener here, which I'm going to paint on once it's really, really dry with my arty brush in circular motions to make sure it gets through to all 3 layers. I have to, if I'm using the clear one, the old smelly one, I have to make sure that's really, really dry. But if you've got the PVA mix, you can put it on when it's a little bit damp. But make sure you've got the right one for what you need. And then work it in circular motions, and then that will make it all nice and stiff, and then we can take it off, and then we can work with that piece to create the shape, and then we can make a cut out a section which we're going to use when we make the crown bit to go into it. All right.